2025. So welcome back everyone to this council year. I'd like to begin with an acknowledgement of country, and I'm going to invite Councillor Mel Rosa to read the acknowledgement, please.
Nyan Jerapin Wajak Nunga Buja Yakan Nija Bilyabadok. I am honoured to be standing on Wajak Nunga country on the banks of the Swan River. Nyan Kadich Nunga Mort Kenny Kadak Nija Wajak Nunga Buja. Nyan Kadich Nija Nunga Bridia Koya Yeye Borda Balapin Modich Nunga Kadajan Mort Ware Buja Yeye. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and respect past, present and emerging leaders, their continual cultural heritage, beliefs and relationship with the land, which continues to be important today. Nyan Yanka Balapin Nuja Nunga Berdia Were Mort Nija Buja. I thank them for their contribution made to life in the town of Victoria Park and to this region.
Thanks, Councillor Mel Rosa. Item 4 on the agenda is announcements from the presiding member. 4.1, the purpose of the agenda briefing forum. The purpose of this forum is to provide an opportunity for elected members to ask questions and obtain additional information on officer reports in the draft ordinary council meeting. It is not a decision-making forum, nor is it open for debate. Members of the public that may be directly affected by an item on the agenda can make presentations, deputations, statements and ask questions prior to the matter being formally considered by council at the next ordinary council meeting. 4.2, notice of recording and live streaming. All participation in this meeting will be audio recorded and live streamed on the town's website. The live stream will be archived and made available on the town's website after the meeting. 4.3, conduct of the meeting. All those in attendance are expected to extend due courtesy and respect to the meeting by refraining from making any adverse or defamatory remarks regarding council, the staff or any elected member. No one shall create a disturbance at a meeting by interrupting or interfering with the proceedings through expressing approval or dissent, by conversing or by any other means. All questions and statements made by members of the public are not to personalise any elected member or members of staff. Questions and statements are to be directed to myself as the presiding member, who may choose to call upon an officer of the town, another elected member, to assist with responses. 4.4, public participation time. There is an opportunity to ask questions and make statements at both the beginning and the end of this meeting. The opportunity to ask questions and make statements at the end of the meeting is limited to those members of the public who did not participate in the first public participation time at this meeting. Public participation time will be held for a maximum of 30 minutes. Any additional time must be by agreement from the meeting and will be in 5-minute increments. As per our usual practice, there is a limit of 3 questions per person and 2 minutes for statements. However, if we don't have many people in the public gallery who wish to ask questions or make statements, we can be a little bit more generous with the timing. 4.5 relates to questions taken on notice. Responses to questions taken on notice that relate to an agenda item will be presented in the officer report for the ordinary council meeting agenda under the separate heading Further Consideration. Item 5 in the agenda is attendance. We have all elected members in attendance. We also have members of the town's executive, management and administration staff present to assist, headed by the Chief Executive Officer, Mr Askew. 5.2 is approval of absence. We have nil. Item 6 on the agenda is declarations of interest. Invite Mr CEO to tell us, are there any declarations of interest, please?
Thank you, Mayor Vernon. I have a number. Item 12.3, Councillor Lindsay Miles, an impartiality interest. Members of the Vic Park Community Centre and the Vic Park Community Garden, who are both recommended to receive town grants, are known to me. Item 12.3, Councillor Peter Devereux, impartiality. I have attended events at the Community Centre and I'm a member of the Vic Park Community Garden. Item 12.4, Councillor Claire Anderson, impartiality. I have been invited to and attended events at the Harold Hawthorne Centre. Item 14.2, myself, impartiality. I will be allocated a credit card as per council policy for that item. Item 12.3, yourself, Mayor Vernon, an impartiality. A number of applicants for grants are known to me from attending meetings with their management or attending their events, namely Curate Arts, Victoria Park Community Centre, Victoria Park Community Garden Association, Kensington Secondary School and Kent Street Senior High School. And lastly, item 12.4, again yourself, Mayor Vernon, impartiality. I have attended meetings with the board and management of Harold Hawthorn Community Centre in previous years about their operating subsidy and attended events held by them.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Are there any other declarations of interest that elected members have not registered as yet? We'll go to them now. Deputy Mayor Ife first, and then I'll come to Councillor Cruiser. Was that an indication from you? Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Vernon. Apologies, I didn't submit this sooner. I have an impartiality interest on 12.3. A number of the applicants are known to me, and I have just submitted that in writing. Thank you.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor Ife. Councillor Cruiser.
Item 12.3, a number of the applicants are known to me.
All right, thank you. Anyone else who needs to make a declaration of interest for any item on the agenda? No? All right, gentle reminder, again, if it comes up during the course of the discussion, including questions that might be asked by your fellow elected members and you hear answers to the questions, if that prompts you to have a conflict of interest that you need to declare, please do so immediately. Thank you. So we'll now move on to item 7 on the agenda, which is public participation time, which I now open at 6:37 p.m. Have an indication from a member of the public who'd like to ask a question in relation to agenda item 12.1. Mr. Boulos, would you like to come forward, please? We have a microphone and a chair for you. You just need to press the button on the microphone to turn it on and equally to turn it off. I'm about to turn my microphone off in a moment. You would have heard the procedure that we follow here. So we generally try to limit the questions to 3 questions per person, as in members of the public. But since you appear to be the only member of the public with us this evening, we can potentially be more generous with the question limit if you do happen to have more than 3 questions to ask. But whenever you're ready, please proceed to ask your questions.
Thank you, Your Honour, for me being here and allowing us to come and sit. I do represent the church, St. Mary and St. Michael Church. Your Honour, we are very, very thankful, number one, for the way things have been going, and we hope that we continue on working into the best interest of the whole population as well as the church community. I don't think I have any questions at this point of time, but if further, if Your Honour will allow me, I will. Thank you.
Okay, so I just do need to let you know, Mr. Boulos, that if there are no other questions from members of the public, and since there are no other members of the public in the gallery at the moment, that means we'll be closing public participation time. We'll be moving on to the agenda proper, which is dealt with by elected members, so myself and fellow councillors. We'll now proceed to be asking questions. So I'll take what you've said as a statement, noting that we do have another public participation time at the end of the meeting, but I can't tell you right now how long it'll be before we get to that because we have a lot of items on the agenda.
Yeah.
And you would be welcome to stay for that and ask questions since you haven't asked any right now. But you may not wish to stay for that because it may take some time. Then again, it might be quite quick. But I will just say this, since we haven't seen you at a council meeting before, you're always welcome to send questions through to the Town of Victoria Park in writing. You can do that by email, and details are on the town's website about how to do that. Or you could bring your questions in writing and drop them off at the administration office building, like down below, any day of the week, Monday to Friday, and ask for those questions to be sent through for future council meeting, and we can endeavour to get answers for you that way too. So if that happens to occur to you once you're sitting back in the public gallery, there are options open to you both later on at this meeting, but also separate to this meeting.
Right.
Right.
I'm grateful. Thank you. And my only question at this point of time is that how can we improve our relationship with the with the council as church, and just to move forward and contribute as we are trying to contribute as much as we can to the community.
All right, thanks, Mr. Boulos. I'm only hesitating as it's an interesting and important question. Normally, questions in relation to are limited at this forum to matters that are in the agenda. So your question extends beyond the scope of our agenda for tonight because it is a development application which is dealt with by our statutory planning staff, and that's the report that they have written. I'd be more than happy outside of this meeting at a different time to have a discussion with you and other members of the church about how you can build the impact of your church community within our broader community and how you can look in the future to liaise with the town and its staff about that very purpose, if that would be okay with you.
Yeah, much appreciated.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much for coming along this evening. You are welcome to stay seated in the public gallery. But again, we've got a number of items to get through on the agenda tonight. Thank you. All right. There being no other members of the public in the gallery, I'll close public participation time at 6:42 p.m. Item 8 on the agenda is presentations. We have none. Item 9 is deputations. We also have none. Item 10, method of dealing with agenda business. So for elected members, we'll only be dealing with questions on items that you've identified that you wish to ask questions about. So I'm going to read out the item numbers from the agenda so far that I have. If you do not hear the item number of an item you wish to ask questions about, please indicate to me when I ask at the end of this list if there are any others to be added. And equally, if you submitted questions for a particular item but you've already received answers and you're satisfied with the answers you have so that you no longer require any questions to be asked about that item, please also let me know that, as we might be able to take some items off the list. So the first one is item 12.1, application for development application, proposed car park, numbers 318, 320 and 322 Shepparton Road, East Victoria Park. Item 12.2, application for development approval for a change of use from grouped dwelling to unhosted short-term rental accommodation at 63 Mackey Street, Victoria Park. Item 12.3, Community Funding Program, Art, Community, Sports Equipment and Urban Forest Grants. Item 13.1, Strategic Waste Management Plan. Item 13.2, Western Australian Local Government Association, Sustainable Energy Project. Item 14.1, Post-Year-End Budget Review for 2023-24, Final Carry Forward Projects and Surplus Funds Allocation. Now, are there any other item numbers that people would like to have added to this list? We'll deal with that now. Councillor Cruiser.
Item 11.1, please.
Any other items, Councillor Cruiser? No? Any other items that people want? Councillor Minson?
Thank you. Item 14.7, LGIS waiver of quotation.
Any other items from anybody else? Councillor Miles?
So I asked some questions about 12.3 and 13.1, but I don't need, but I'm happy with the answers I received by email, so I don't need to ask them again, but I'm not sure if anyone else.
All right, we'll do that now. I'll find out. Are there any other persons who had questions about 12.3 who would like to proceed with them? All right, so there are, so we'll do that with 12.3. It'll remain on the list. 13.1, the Strategic Waste Management Plan. I think we all would have seen some of the answers that came through. Is there anyone who wants to still ask questions about that going forward? Councillor Devereux? Yep, that's fine. So we'll leave that one in. I'm going to add one in as well myself, which is 12.4 operating subsidies. for 2025 to 2027. And lucky last, anybody who's still got an item that they need to put on the list? No? All right. So those are the item numbers that we'll go through, and we'll do those in order now. Starting with item 11 on the agenda, which is the Chief Executive Officer reports. So item 11.1, oh, actually, before I get to that, I do need to add one extra one in that I forgot I had discussed with the CEO, is to put in 13.3, the Lathlane Precinct redevelopment project update. All right, so item 11 is Chief Executive Officer report. So we have some questions in relation to 11.1 Council Resolution Status Report for January 2025. Councillor Cruiser.
Thank you. One of the outstanding resolutions at the moment relates to the motion in December for speed humps on Rutland Avenue. We were told in December that consultation around those speed humps would be able to begin in early to mid-January, and then in a further email update we were told that consultation would begin at the beginning of last week, but we haven't had an update. Could you please provide an update on that?
All right, I think that might be going to the Chief Operations Officer, Ms Adams.
Thank you. Through the chair, I will take that on notice and provide it. We are just waiting on some information.
All right, so we'll take that on notice. Anything further, Councillor Cruiser? No? Any other elected members with questions about this particular item? No? I think there was one that I had identified when I quickly had a look through. This is in relation to Resolution 201 of 2023, passed on the 19th of September 2023. Have the management orders for numbers 2 to 8 Beatty Avenue and number 7 Raleigh Street, Carlisle, which is roughly lots 1002, 1003, known as part of Miller's Crossing, been granted to the Town of Victoria Park as yet? Direct that to the Acting Chief Community Planner, Mr Doy.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. I believe they have, but just to be certain, I will take it on notice and provide the proper answer.
Thank you. We'll take that on notice. Appreciate that. Anything further from anyone on item 11.1? No? All right. In that case, we are going to move on to item 12.1, which is application for development approval, proposed car park numbers 318, 320 and 322 Shepparton Road, East Victoria Park. Councillor Hamer, I understand you had a series of questions about this item.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Yeah, I did supply these to the town and got answers, but I will just ask them publicly. There was a number of claims from the submissions that weren't able to be answered by the church or the applicant. I'd just like to ask them now. Does the church car park cause any issues with the town's cycling infrastructure?
Direct that question to our Manager of Development Services, Mr Cruikshank.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There's no footpath on the southern side of Gerrard Street where the development site is located, so in our view, no, there's no conflict between cycling infrastructure and the proposed car park.
Okay. Will it be possible that Gerrard Street sees extra traffic from the Edward Millen Park project?
Mr Cruikshank?
Madam Mayor, that's not expected given the distance of Edward Millen from the subject site, as well as Shepparton Road being a pretty strong physical barrier between the two.
Yep. Has there been reports of speeding churchgoers leaving after service?
Mr Cruikshank?
Madam Mayor, not to my knowledge.
Has there been any reports of physical altercations between residents and church attendees?
Mr Cruikshank?
Madam Mayor, also not to my knowledge.
And lastly, is there any reports of church children being left in cars.
Mr Cruikshank?
Not to my knowledge.
Cool. Thanks for clarifying.
Thank you. Are there any other questions with regards to this particular item 12.1? Councillor Minson.
Thank you, Matt. Just seeking some clarity on the proposal for 10 Gerard Street, if the town does have any further information. So just considering, I guess, that there was development proposals for the site, which have subsequently been taken out, but also the fact that there's, I guess, a request through for subdivision now to the West Australian Planning Commission for the same site. And there's, I guess, a public submission comment, I guess, querying that with the removal of the existing buildings for the new car park, that there was potential for some of the church services to move into that residential area, presumably to that 10 Gerard Street site. So I was wondering if we had any further information on any proposal for what was going on at that site.
Direct that question to Mr Cruikshank.
Madam Mayor, this application originally proposed that number 10 Gerard Street, the existing dwelling would be demolished and replaced with a new two-storey building for use as a Sunday school. There were concerns expressed by us around the use of the land for that purpose and the scale and intensity of the proposed building, which subsequently resulted in the applicant changing the intended use of the premises to one that would be for residential accommodation but with multiple bedrooms, which still was of concern to us in terms of the land use intensity. Further to that, the applicant then chose to withdraw that aspect of the proposal from this application and seek approval only for a car park on 318 to 322 Shepparton Road. As to the future intended use of number 10 Gerard Street, we probably know nothing further other than, yes, they have received a subdivision application that would indicate maybe an intent to subdivide the land into two properties. If that proceeds, then obviously we'll need to deal with any development applications for future buildings on the site. If the church decide not to proceed with that subdivision approval, they have a building there, and similarly it will need a change of use if they propose something other than residential. So we'll wait to see what transpires, but I do acknowledge the comments that have been made by some residents as to their concern that maybe some of the existing church activities from buildings that are to be demolished may be transferred elsewhere. If that was to be the case, and if number 10 Gerard Street was to be one of those properties, again, it needs a development approval and we'll assess that on its merits.
Thank you.
Councillor Minson, anything further? No?
Nothing further. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Other questions about this item? Councillor Cruiser?
Do we have any information about how widely spread the congregation is across Perth that has been provided to us from the organisation?
I'm not sure how relevant that is to a planning application, Councillor Cruiser. Mr Cruikshank, is that a relevant factor for council to consider in a planning application?
Madam Mayor, we don't have that information, and no, I don't consider it's relevant to the planning consideration. It may be something that the representative of the church may be able to answer in any event for councillors, maybe outside of this forum.
Thank you. Anything further, Councillor Cruiser? No. I do have a couple of questions. I'm trying to make sure I've got this clear in my own head. So the proposal is the amalgamation of 3 lots into one single lot. Are those lots on their own all zoned as residential, and if so, at what density level, Mr Cruikshank?
Madam Mayor, they're all zoned residential and they're all have a density coding of residential R40.
Thank you. In the compliance assessment page of your report, which is page 26 of 141, it indicates that the land use, that the permissibility or deemed to comply is no change. So if this proposal is to turn effectively 3 residential lots into one big residential lot and then convert the use of that land to a car park, how is that a permissible land use if it's supposedly land for residential use? Mr Cruikshank?
Madam Mayor, all 3 lots are zoned for residential purposes. I can say with certainty that 318 Shepparton Road is currently used as a church, and a church is regarded as a place of public worship. A place of public worship is a discretionary land use that can be approved in a residential zone. So I think the reference in the report to no change is reflecting the fact that there is a church already there on 318 and the use of that property isn't changing. It's a discretionary land use which can be permitted on residential zone land. I'm a little bit hesitant in answering that with 320 to 322. I can't recall at the moment as to whether they are actually used for residential purposes at the moment or are used for church activities. Obviously, in saying what I've just said then, I've just realised that obviously the public submissions have made comments that indicating they're used for they're used for non-residential purposes, church activities. I'll confirm that's the case. So the reference to no change is certainly correct when it comes to 318. I suspect it's probably correct when it comes to 320 and 322 also, but I guess we can just confirm that.
We'll take that on notice then in relation to 320 and 322. But perhaps I just want to explore that a little more with you, because I understand from the agenda attachment 12.1.1, which is the location plan and site inspection photographs, and from my drive-by, they appear to be residential buildings that look like houses from the outside. So if the land is approved for residential use and the lots other than the church part are going to be consolidated into a single lot, how is it that land that is approved for residential use would then be able to be approved for what will effectively be a car park? Mr. Cruikshank?
Madam Mayor, as I understand it, the view that's been taken by the officer in writing this report is that the approved use of the land is for place of public worship, and the development of a car park on the bulk of 320 and 322 and a little bit of 318 is sort of incidental to the use as a church. It's not a new land use in its own right, so it's considered to be incidental or ancillary to the primary use as a place of worship. However, again, I'll take that on notice and provide a more fulsome response.
All right, so we'll take that on notice, but I do have to ask further questions. I could understand what you've said if that was in relation to lot 318, but the proposal for an amalgamation of the other lots, which are currently for residential purposes, would in effect change their use, would it not? As in the 2 lots that are to be amalgamated in to create the 1 lot that currently have a residential use. Mr Cruikshank?
Madam Mayor, I would see that it changes their actual use because I'm now probably understanding that 320 and 322 are not used for residential purposes. They're used for church-related activities. So I'm probably saying that they change their actual use, but I don't believe that the construction of a car park on 320 and 322 would result in a change of land use or a change of land use classification, because we would say that the car park that's happening on that land is ancillary or incidental to the use of the land, the predominant use of the land as a place of worship.
So with lots 320 or number 320 and 322, I'd like you to clarify the distinction between the use of the land for residential purposes and the use that is being made of the buildings on the land. So what I understand you to say is that the town's position is they believe that the 2 buildings on 320 and 322 are being used for purposes related to the activities of the church, but they are, to all intents and purposes, not commercial buildings, but residential buildings on land that is zoned for residential purposes, regardless of whether a residence is built on that land or not. Mr. Cruikshank?
Madam Mayor, I think at this point in time it's probably important that I do understand what the actual use of 320 and 322 Shepparton Road is. So I think the best course of action would be for me to say, I'll take that on notice.
All right, thank you. Take that on notice. And I have a final follow-up question. What is your view, based on your experience, about the highest and best use of land within the town of Victoria Park that is zoned for residential purposes? Mr. Cruikshank?
I guess it would be fair to say, Madam Mayor, that with land zoned for residential purposes, the primary intended use of the land is to be used for residential purposes, for housing supply and meet housing demand targets. Yeah. But maybe I should just caveat that by saying, obviously, we have a town planning scheme that allows alternative land uses to occur in residential zone land.
All right. I might just then ask you this one question. So if this were to proceed to council and council were to approve the officer's recommendation and the lots are consolidated into a single lot, will that substantively then, that one lot, have the current approved use of the land that runs with 318 and not the uses of the land that currently run with 320 and 322, namely residential use? Mr. Cruikshank?
Sorry, Madam Mayor, maybe I didn't understand the question. If I don't answer correctly, then please correct me. If the approval was granted, then the approval will be for a place of public worship with an incidental car park located on 320 and 322 Shepparton Road. So it'll be for a car park on 320 and 322 associated with the place of worship on 318.
All right. I think I might need to take it offline to send through a series of questions because I'm looking at the officer recommendation and it refers to a proposed car park at numbers 318, 320, 322 A and B, and they are relatively said to be lots 5, 6 and 7, but you actually have three numbers, street numbers appearing, 318, 320, 322A and 322B, but only three lot numbers. Which is the lot number that belongs to 318? Mr. Cruikshank?
Madam Mayor, that's lot 6. So street number 322, which is lot 7, as I understand it, has a duplex pair on it. One is referred to as 322 and one is 322A. But yeah, I can see that in the report there's some inconsistent references to that property.
All right, thank you. So noting that 318 is lot 6 and its approved land use is for a place of worship, is that right? Have I understood that right?
Other than it's not lot 5 is 318. It was
sorry,
yeah,
I wrote that down
yes.
wrong. I thought you
Yeah.
said 318 was...
I think you asked was 320 and I said lot 6, but if I got that wrong.
No, I had asked what was 318. So 318 is lot 5? Yep, okay. And so its approved land use is for a place of worship? Yes. So not approved for residential purposes?
The approved land use, physical land use, is a place of worship, yes.
Right, thank you. So if you amalgamate the other two lots, 6 and 7, into 5, the effect of what you're recommending is that lots 6 and 7, which currently are approved use for residential purposes, are going to acquire the new approved use, which is place of worship. Is that right?
Madam Mayor, the way I would see it is lots 6 and 7 are receiving approval for the use as a car park associated with the place of worship. And what's further complicates things is the car park sits not only on lot 6 and 7, it sits partly over lot 5 as well. So adds another dimension of confusion, complexity.
Yep, so I think the answer to my next question might be in the affirmative, that the consolidation of the 3 lots into one will not just be that lots 6 and 7 are approved for use as a car park for a place of worship. Won't they be subsumed into the land use approved for a place of worship? Mr Cruikshank?
Madam Mayor, I'll take that one on notice.
All right, I do have some more questions, but I think it'll get too technical, so I'll send them through by an email so they can understand that a bit better, because I'm having a little trouble about what's going to happen to the approved permissible use of lots 6 and 7 if they're amalgamated into 5 and become one lot that presumably will only bear the number 318. So I'll send that through separately. Any other questions from anyone about this item? Councillor Melrosa?
The town planning scheme says that a car park is an X use in the residential zone. How does this work in relation to that?
Mr Cruikshank?
Madam Mayor, because we are not considering this to be a standalone car park in its own right, it's a car park associated with the public worship use. So, as I maybe tried to explain in an earlier answer, we're not treating it as a separate land use or land use classification. We're treating this application as a place of worship, as the land use with an associated car park.
Anything further, Councillor Melrosa?
Other than perhaps the report can be updated in a way where that's explained a little bit better, because I think having that as an X use makes it a bit confusing if you were to read the town planning scheme and then wonder why that use is being proposed for that site.
Mr Cruikshank, is there an opportunity between now and OCM for there to be further commentary in the further consideration section of the report?
Yes, of course, no worries.
Just to pick up something from what Councillor Melrosa just said, if Council were to approve the officer's recommendation, would that mean once the lot is consolidated into the future, it would no longer, effectively the area in currently 6 and 7, no longer have any permissibility for use as residential purposes, or would it retain that, given it won't have any designated individual separate lot numbers anymore? Mr Cruikshank?
Madam Mayor, in that scenario, it would become one lot with one lot number, but the use, I guess the approved use remains that part of the site is approved as a car park, not as residential. It's zoned residential, and that might enable someone in the future to come along and propose an application for a residential development on that part of the site. Obviously, that would mean that there then again would result in no car parking for the church, but that application would have to be assessed on its merits, and obviously council's aware that we've removed minimum parking requirements for developments these days.
Okay, thanks, Mr Cruikshank. One further question that springs to mind from the answer you just gave then is, if in the future this was turned into the car park as proposed, and then there were to be a development application to further develop the church on the site, that would then be considered by the town's officers to be a further development of the buildings that could extend over the area proposed to be the car park. Would that be right, once it's one lot? Mr Cruikshank?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Any other questions about this item? Councillor Hamer.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Just to try and clarify some of those answers. So 318 is currently R40 residential, but is being discretionally used as a church. That's correct?
Mr Cruikshank?
Yes, 318 is zoned residential R40, and a church on that site is a discretionary land use.
Okay. And if council was to support the car park being this amalgamation and a car park being used to service the church, that would be a very similar situation to the tennis, table tennis across the road, which has a facility and a car park on site together.
Mr Cruikshank?
Yes, it would be similar insofar as the land zone residential and it has car parking on it for the use of associated with that premises, as is probably the case with many residential properties through the town that are used for non-residential purposes, such as consulting rooms and things of that kind, where they have associated car parking on residential zone land.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hamer. Anything further from anyone else on this matter before we move on? Councillor Devereux?
Can I just ask if there's other churches in the town of Victoria Park that have adjacent car parks?
Mr Cruikshank?
Madam Mayor, I'd have to look into that, but maybe the question is, when we're talking about adjacent car parks, do we mean on a separate lot or on the same lot? I mean, Riverview Church comes to mind. Hang on, that's commercial. Sorry, I take that back. Maybe there are others. I'll have to look at those, but it was the
Did you mean,
question-
Councillor
yeah.
Devereux, on separate lots like this configuration, as in that there are separate lots next to the church and that they're being used for car parking for the church, even though they've got residential land use on them? Is that what you were meaning to ask?
Yeah, it seemed like there are churches that seem to have car parks next to them. I'm not dead sure of the configuration, but it just seemed like it might have been prior experience that was similar.
Because I'm thinking St Joachim's Catholic Church, which is on Ursula Flane's property, is within the entirety of the lot, and Ursula Frane and Our Lady Help of Christians on Berwick Street doesn't have its own separate car park because the school campus is next door, and I think the parking on site for the school is very small and is just multi-use, but it's all on the school's entire lot land. And then Holy Name in Carlisle, I think, has some parking around the church, but I think it's separate lots next door. And then there's the St Peter's Anglican Church on King Leonard Street, which I don't think has its own car park next door, not that I can think of. And there might be one other church, Holy Trinity in East Vic Park, down near Higgins Park, that one, up the back, yeah. So is that something that you want taken on notice, Councillor Devereux? Because we're all probably a bit vague on the details. Mr Cruikshank, we can take that on notice
I
as
can look
to
into
whether
that,
there's
yeah.
anything comparable to this within the town. Thank you. Anything further, Councillor Devereux? No? Any other questions from anyone on this item? Councillor Cruiser?
We have information that this has been used as a church since the early 1950s. Is that only one of those lots, or what is that only one of those lots?
Mr Cruikshank?
Madam Mayor, at this point, I understand that relates to 318 Shepparton Road, that statement. Paragraph 12, it says, according to council records, the existing church building at number 318 Shepparton Road was granted approval by the City of Perth in 1953. The report's probably a little bit silent on what the use of the other premises were, and that's why I said I would take that on notice to understand what they have been approved for.
Anything further, Councillor Cruiser?
I'm aware this probably needs to be taken on notice, but do we have records of other churches in the town of Vic Park that are in zoned residential areas that have been refused permission to develop, build car parks, or take other steps required to sustain their congregations?
Mr Cruikshank?
Madam Mayor, we would have records of approvals that have been granted over a number of years. It may be some task if the expectation is for us to locate every church and locate every church that's on residential zone land, and then locate every decision that's been made. Can certainly think about if there's been something in more recent times that comes to mind, rather than doing that research, if that's able to satisfy the councillor's needs.
Councillor Cruiser, obviously there is a resources issue. Is this
I will
the
withdraw.
avenue you want to go
Yes.
down? No?
I'm happy to withdraw that request. I will not make you go through the complete records.
All right. Thanks, Councillor Cruiser. Any other questions about this item? No. All right. So thank you, everyone. We're going to move on to item 12.2, application for development approval for a change of use from group dwelling to unhosted short-term rental accommodation at 63 Mackey Street, Victoria Park. Councillor Miles, you had some questions about this. Do you want to pursue those?
Just have one question that I just wanted to clarify. So, I wanted to know how many short-term rental accommodation properties we've got registered in the town, and how many development applications we've got at the moment for kind of new ones to be registered.
Mr. Cruikshank?
Madam Mayor, we don't have a comprehensive record of the number of development applications that have been granted over the years for short-term accommodation, but what I can tell you is with the state government's short-term rental accommodation scheme that was introduced, there's currently 169 properties in the town that have been registered. We have seen a significant increase in development applications in the last 6 months, which has been brought on by the need to register under the state government's STRA scheme. We've currently got 16 development applications in the system for STRA. We've probably dealt with a similar number over the last couple of months.
Anything further, Councillor Miles?
And then just to clarify, so now with the new state government laws, all the short-term rental accommodation has to be registered with the town and receive development approval to continue. Is that correct?
Mr. Cruikshank?
Madam Mayor, all short-term accommodation needs to be registered with the state government scheme. That's as of that was the start of this year, 1st of January this year, to be registered with the state. The expectation is that they all obtain the necessary planning approvals where required by the 1st of January next year. I say that because, as you may be aware, there's certain forms of short-term accommodation that are exempt from planning approval, but they still need to be registered under the state government's scheme.
That was everything, thanks.
Are there any other questions about this particular item from anyone? No? All right. Thank you. We'll move on from 12.2. We'll move now to 12.3. Community Funding Program, Art, Community, Sports Equipment and Urban Forest Grants. I have a number of questions about this. Councillor Hamer, I'm going to come to you first.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. The 12.03.2 comments from the panel mentioned that the Chinese minority group is of 7% and is not large enough to justify that for English language lessons. Is there a percentage or a threshold in mind that the panel does use to qualify for that grant?
Direct that question to Mr. Doy.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon, and thanks, Councillor Hamer. No, applications are assessed against all grant criteria to determine whether it is recommended for endorsement by Council. This particular project was presented with material gaps in information more broadly, resulting a recommendation to not support. The town has been working with this group on a number of occasions to improve the quality of their applications and hopes they will be successful in future rounds.
Anything further, Councillor Hamer?
No.
All right, thank you. Councillor Miles, you had a question?
This was the one that I said.
Oh, this is the one that you didn't want to pursue. That's fine. All right, thank you. Anybody else got any questions about this item? Councillor Minson?
Thank you, Matt. Yes, a question regarding under the urban forest grants, the fifth project proposed for approval by Sukhjit Khalsa. There's like a tree planting and landscape design for $4,657. Just looking for clarity on the project scope for that grant. It's just noted in there that it's planting on a suburban property adjacent to Cape Reserve. I'm just wondering, is the proposal for tree and shrub and ground cover planting all on one person's private property?
Mr. Doy?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Thanks, Councillor Minson, for the question. That is my understanding. So there's an interface between the property and Kate Street Reserve. That's my understanding. However, I'm looking at the attachment with the information, and it infers that, but not necessarily is particularly concrete. So I might take that on notice just to confirm, but I believe that is the case.
Thank you. And if you just for other questions, maybe taken on notice adjacent with that. Yeah, confirming that it is just one property, and maybe clarity on the scope and some of the items for considering that it was approved about access to the community and how it is considered a community benefit if it is on just one private property, and just a bit of, I guess, additional information about why it was approved, considering that it is planting on a person's private property.
Mr. Doy?
Yeah, I can take that on notice and provide further information. It's worth noting in the panel assessment, it does say the project demonstrates strong community engagement, considerable canopy contribution, and it's home to a strong and engaged community that will benefit from the project. But what does that mean? So I take that point. So we'll provide some more information just to explain that.
Thank you. And just one follow-up question. Is it possible to, I guess, get the address of the property, or is that a privacy issue with the applicant's name being listed?
Mr. Doy?
I suspect that's a privacy issue, but again, I'll take that on notice and provide that in the package of information to do with that application. Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Minson. Are there any other questions about this item? Councillor Cruiser?
Have previous urban forest grants been given to increase our tree canopy on private land? I'm aware that there was at least one on at a private school.
There has been one at Connect Victoria Park, which is private land that I'm aware of, and I think the Montessori school in Burswood has also had 2 urban forest grants, which is private land. Apart from that, Mr. Doy?
Almost all of them. So they're either on the verge, which is public land, directly adjacent, or it's actually on the private land. So the Montessori school is a good example. Actually, most of the schools are a great example. Harold Hawthorne is another. So Kent Street High School has had a number of plantings. So most of them are actually end up being on private land.
So, Mr. Doy, just to clarify from Councillor Cruz's question, are you assuming then that the high schools and the primary schools in the town, which are actually on Crown-owned land, should be considered to be private land versus public land? Mr. Doy?
Sorry, I should differentiate. So we should define that. If we're meaning public land as in land that is owned by the state, then there has been some that have been awarded in that way. Montessori School is privately owned, so that is on private land. And then if in my definition, when I said public land, I was thinking about local government run land, which is often the verge. So that they would be the three definitions. But we have had some private land holdings that have been the subject of the grant.
Anything further, Councillor Cruiser?
As part of the assessment project, do we make any requirements about public access? So, for example, does the public need to be able to access the Montessori school grounds and the place where the tree is located?
Mr. Doy?
In the report, in the UFS section, there's a criteria for the grant, and one of the criteria is the impact that it has on the place. So that is considered, and as part of that impact on the place, we think about accessibility by the community. We think about a range of different things. So it is, but it's not expressly considered in terms of access to the broader community.
Councillor Minson?
Thank you. Yeah, just to follow up, I guess, on that chain of questioning. Has there been an urban forest grant approved for, I guess, planting on private property, which is, I guess, residential with like a single dwelling, a private dwelling for residential purposes?
Mr Dewey?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. A residential dwelling, not that I can recall. So I will take that notice to confirm, but I'm quite certain that there hasn't been. Urban Forest at Home targets residential development mainly, but I'll take that on notice and just confirm.
I think the grant to connect Victoria Park to private land is the only one that's on residential land where there are residences, but it's group dwelling on there. So a very low rise, multi-storey, I think maybe 2 levels on that land, separate to the other individual properties that are owned by Connect Victoria Park. So anything further, Councillor Minson? No? Further questions on this item? Councillor Cruiser.
The Food Trees for Vic Park's Black Cockatoos applicant notes that the funding is meant to help support tree planting in private gardens. Does that include only the information sessions or the provision of trees for private gardens?
Mr Dewey?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. I will take that on notice and just confirm. Thanks.
All right, we'll take that on notice, thanks. I do have a question about the same project recommended for approval. So what is set out on page 2 of attachment 12.3.4 refers to 61 proposed trees to be planted at 50 residential properties across the town, and the project incorporates the information sessions, the tree planting and ongoing community engagement. So effectively 3 things. If we only looked at it from a tree perspective, 61 trees divided by the $7,100 that are proposed to be allocated, it's about $116 per tree. But taking it that some part of the grant potentially is to go towards the information sessions for participants, is that the town's understanding? And who does the town understand is going to be conducting these information sessions for participants and the ongoing community engagement? Is that going to be the applicant or somebody else, Mr Dewey?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. That's my understanding, is that the funding contribution from the town will facilitate all of the activities that are outlined on page 2 of the attachment, and that it will be the applicant that's undertaking the information sessions. But as I have with some of the others, I'll take that on notice and provide just a more detailed answer just to make sure that's the case.
So as much as I love all greening projects, I do have to ask this question. How is this a good use of grant funding when the town could, through its Urban Forest at Home program, basically cultivate food trees for black cockatoos and ensure that those species varieties are available for those who would like to register through the town's annual giveaway program, so that we ensure that people are getting both the right species that have been developed for our environment, and that we equally give them information sessions about how to care for a seedling, especially given how hard we know it is to get a good sapling to grow in the current climate. So I'm worried about things like the success and the overall benefit of this type of grant, that money is simply being given out to people to plant trees. We don't really know how to measure that. Mr Dewey?
So thanks, Mayor Vernon. So through the Urban Forest at Home program, we do, as you described, so we provide local endemic species, some of which are for black cockatoos or are suitable for black cockatoos. And so we do that for the Urban Forest at Home. I guess I am I didn't sit on the panel, so I am estimating what the panel assessment would have been. That it is really beneficial to have a diversity of voices and participants in the spread of information and the the spread of the message around our urban greening and the work that we do in our private properties rather than just what the town does. So it is good to have another voice other than the town.
All right, thanks, Mr. Doy. Councillor Melrosa.
Just one quick question about this particular project. It says in here 50 residential properties, and then it says further down in commas food corridor. Is there in this application a map that identifies a food corridor? Is there specific, I mean, what I'm saying is, are these residential properties specifically targeted for some sort of feature or corridor aspect?
Mr. Doy.
I'll take it on notice, Councillor Melrosa, around the food corridor mapping that the applicant may or may not have provided. So I will take that on notice just to be certain. But I do know that the town does have an emerging view on that through its urban forest work, and that would have been what was provided by the applicant would have been cross-checked against that. So, but I will take that on notice just to see whether they did provide any mapping. Yeah.
All right, we'll take that on notice as to whether there's any mapping of a food corridor as part of that application by KBQ. Thank you. Any other questions about this item? Councillor Devereux.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Just picking up on the same application, I just wondered if we're clear on what the definition of high-value food trees is, and whether those are exotic trees or native trees, or whether there's a mix of those.
Mr. Doy.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon, and thanks for the question, Councillor Devereux. That is a good question, and my understanding I actually asked the same question of the team, and the answer from the team is a mixture of exotic and native trees. So trees that are providing food for black cockatoos that the black cockatoos ultimately will eat is of high value, be it that there are some that are more nutritious and better for the black cockatoos than others. And so the definition at the moment, as we have it at the town, is quite broad ranging. It's not necessarily just endemic species for the black cockatoos.
Thank you.
Thanks. Any further questions about this item? No. All right. We will move on then to item 12.4, which is operating subsidies 2025 to 2027. This was to be included at a request from myself. Noting that the town has moved to a policy position of capping operating subsidies at $100,000 per annum per application plus GST, which according to the recommendation is to be with Perth all areas CPI applied to years 2 and 3 of the agreement. So, Harold Hawthorne has been in receipt of an operating subsidy from the town of Vic Park for some time. As the report mentions, are other community-based organisations receiving operating subsidies of similar amounts. When we give them an operating subsidy for a 3-year period that in the 2nd and 3rd year has CPI applied to it, what happens to those organisations' financial sustainability when after the 3rd year their $100,000 has grown because of the application of CPI, and then we require them to reapply for another 3-year funding round and they are back down to $100,000 again, having lost the benefit of the last 2 years' worth of applied CPI? Mr. Doy. I recognise I didn't send that through in advance. If you'd like to take it on notice, please do so.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. I do want to have a go, but I'm not going to. I'm going to take it on notice. Thanks, Mayor Vernon, if that's okay.
Wise choice, Mr. Dwyer, I think. Wise choice. All right, I'll leave that one with you because that throws up other questions, but we'll see what the answer is. Any other questions about 12.4? No? All right. 13.1, the Strategic Waste Management Plan. We still had questions for that. Councillor Devereux, I think you still wanted to ask questions about that.
I can't find my question, Mayor Vernon, so I'll leave that. Thank you.
If it comes to you before we get to the end of the night, Councillor Devereux, just let me know. It's fine. And obviously it can always be sent through offline. 13.2, Western Australian Local Government Association. Oh, sorry, you found it.
Sorry, that was quicker than expected. My question was just, given the officer recommendation at the moment is not the recommendation that's indicated in the officer report, how do we practically tackle that at the next meeting to put that into effect?
You move an amendment to the officer recommendation or an alternate. Or vote it down. Or vote it down. I think we would probably look at an alternate, I would have thought. Because I'm sure we'll find consensus amongst us.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thank you. So any other questions on 13.1? No? All right. 13.2, Western Australian Local Government Association Sustainable Energy Project. Councillor Hamer, you have a question?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. I had to do some Googling on megawatts and dollars and whatnot, but I was very curious of the prices quoted for the previous contract, which would then escalate from 48.03 to 98.54. Just the context of what that actually meant in the real world. What was the current price of energy that is coming from non-renewable sources such as Collie if we didn't have the sustainable resources and facilities?
Ms Adams.
Thank you, through the chair. So the prices mentioned relate to the wholesale energy market, which is outside this project costing, and the price that we received for the non-green power, the black power, is $53.97 per megawatt hour. It's not really a like-for-like comparison to our understanding of that $48.03 with the $98.54 that's mentioned in the report. We believe that $98 actually includes additional charges like the distribution, network distribution charges and the like. So that's what the power cost we believe at the moment is $53.97.
So if we didn't have this agreement at all, facilities like Leisure Life would be paying $53 over the next 3 years.
Per hour, you mean?
Per hour, yeah.
Ms Adams, is that right?
Through the chair, that's my understanding, yes.
And then if we sign up to this new deal, we're looking at paying $98 per hour, which is technically double what that is.
Ms Adams?
So through the chair, that $98.54 is what we understand to be the cost if we were not undertaking or part of any project sourcing the renewable power. So the understanding and intention is to be part of the project in some way. We just are not sure at the moment just how many participants there will be.
Okay, just to go back over that if I can. So if we sign up with this deal and the power comes from those listed sustainable facilities, the wind farms, we will be paying $98 per hour to supply power to the town facilities. That's correct?
Ms Adams?
So through the chair, the $98 or 98 odd dollars is our understanding of the cost if we did not sign up.
If we did not sign up, but we'd still got the power from those facilities, but just separately, or if that was power from Collie, Black Power kind of thing.
Ms Adams?
Essentially, sorry, through the chair, essentially, yes, that would be our estimated cost, yes, but it's also subject to, to the increases that we would likely see, as we did historically over the last 3-year engagement as well.
Okay, I'm still not clear. So the current price we're paying now, $48.03, that will go up to what estimated price if we have this arrangement with everyone else?
Ms Adams?
Through the chair, I think just for clarity, the $48 is the wholesale energy price, which the town is not paying at the moment because we are actually under the agreement via the project. So it's not that we're paying $48 now, and it would go up to $98. But if we do not choose to participate in the project, we expect that the year one rate would start at that $98.54, inclusive of distribution charges.
So what are we paying now?
So
You're wanting to know what we're paying now under the current power purchase agreement that we have? Is that right, Councillor Hamer?
Yes, because I read it as
Yep.
we were paying 48 and this new contract would go up to 98, which is obviously incorrect from those answers.
Ms Adams, is Councillor Hamer's understanding correct?
So through the chair, I'll take it on notice, because in terms of what we're paying now, it's a little bit confusing, because in terms of doing apples for apples, it's hard. Some of them are dollars per megawatt hour, some are cents per kilowatt hour, and some are our annual usage charges. At the moment, our costs under the agreement are presented as an annual cost that we have, which has projected savings which have been incorporated. We've tried to work that out and we've asked Welga, so I'll take it on notice and see what we can get back.
Councillor Hamer?
Because I do remember the contract we signed a few years ago was on the provision that there was savings to be made. I'm just curious of whether those savings will still be made in the future contract, or whether those have sort of flattened out to be more closer to normal market wholesale prices.
Ms Adams?
Through the chair, in answer to your first part of your question, it was predicated on making savings, and we did over 3 years. And the intention in the modelling shows that we will still be making savings. The amount of savings does depend on how many participants there are. So at the moment, we've assumed 100%, as Welga have in their modelling, but they've done modelling for the 75, 50 down to 25%.
Can I take that answer on notice of what the current charges are close to in that one metric that's being used, the megawatt hours, if that can be converted?
Ms Adams, are you clear on what that question is that you would be taking on notice?
So just for clarity, my understanding is that you want to see what that $48.03 is in terms of whether it's for the black power or the green power portion.
No, what we're paying currently now from these energy sources, and what that equates to in that megawatt hour dollar. Like, are we paying 32 megawatt hour, or what does it cost for the duration of the time that we're using that power source? Yeah, is that possible?
So you want the hourly megawatt, and you want the hourly kilowatt, or the two different ones you mentioned, because one's the hourly megawatt and the other one was is it the kilowatts? Is that per minute or something to that effect?
Yeah, there's kilowatt hours, there's megawatts, dollars per megawatt, cents per kilowatt hour, and then we've got the yearly cost. So I will reiterate my answer from before, which is that we have been trying, and I think Welga have been asked this question, but to try and equate it back, we can do a rough calc based on how many megawatts we've done and our cost that we've had.
Yeah, if there's something that can be done just in a number that is available between what we're currently paying and what the contract would be and what the market is, just so we can sort of roughly see where that is in relation to. Doesn't have to be exact, but and whatever number works better to convert between the three, obviously, if that can be sort of somewhat worked out. Thanks.
Ms Adams, are you happy enough that you're clear on that so they can take it on notice?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
All right, thank you, Councillor Hamer. We'll try to take that on notice. I'll try to dumb that question down. It would be really helpful to understand, if we could, whether the simple proposition is that dirty energy is going to cost us half what clean green energy is going to cost us going forward. Are we able to get an answer clarifying that, Ms Adams?
So, Madam Mayor, there is the cost of, as you've referenced, dirty energy. There is a cost for the green energy. So it's not that it's actually, it's not without cost to have that. But overall, as part of this agreement, we will be saving in excess of what it's actually costing us to have the green energy.
In terms of paragraph 5 of the report, it talks about the project basically covering 8 facilities that were contestable, which is said to mean consume more than 50,000 kilowatts per year. So within the 50,000 kilowatts, is that considered to be the uncontestable generation if contestable is more than 50,000 kilowatts? So do we know if we had any of those facilities that actually consumed less than 50,000 kilowatts per year? Or have you only done the 50,000 kilowatts per year benchmark as the contestable amount over that? Have you only done that amortised across all the 8 facilities rather than knowing the consumption of each individual facility? Ms Adams?
Madam Mayor, the criteria of the 50,000 for those 8 sites was met as part of the modelling, and so no, they weren't under 50,000, and the modelling was done for all 8 sites. And it's based on the usage that we're estimating.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions about this item? Councillor Devereux.
So just looking at the same paragraph that Mayor Vernon just referred to, paragraph 5 on page 107. So can I confirm that from the agreement that we had with Walga since 2022, the town saving on the green clean power compared to the dirty power was $348,651?
Ms Adams?
Through the chair, that is correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this particular item? Councillor Cruiser?
If we were not part of the Walga deal, we would presumably then just be alone. There is no option to work with a group of other councils to buy dirty energy.
Ms Adams?
Through the chair, the town always has options. However, and there's been a number of discussions at local government level, and the purchasing power of our combined group is actually considerably higher than what I believe we could achieve with a number of smaller amount of councils.
Any other questions about this particular item? I might just ask a couple more if I can. With the information that's in paragraph 12 about the bundled pricing and the unbundled pricing, noting that the unbundled pricing disaggregates the price into energy, network capacity and others, whereas bundled aggregates them all together, do we have any information through the Walga arrangement that we've been a part of about an issue I've heard about having clean energy but which is transmitted through dirty transmission lines, namely overhead power lines and poles, which then means you've got your clean energy being produced at your wind farms, but the way to get it to your particular community is through dirty transmission lines, which in themselves have a cost for the environment. Do we have any information on the impact of the difference between dirty transmission and the uptake of renewable clean energy sources? Ms Adams?
It's a good question, Madam Mayor. I'd actually say we don't have that information. I know we've talked at length because it's not just the transmission. Sorry, excuse me. It's not just the transmission as well that can be seen as dirty. It's also the actual production, because a lot goes into that as well of the clean energy. So even though we've asked that question, I'm not sure we could even get you that data.
Okay, I won't make it as something to take on notice, but if there is anything that town knows about that, I guess, paradigm about renewable energy and the transmission network, etc., the town could share, that would be useful. Thank you. And my final question is, the savings that we've made over the 3 years so far of the agreement, awkward question, have we done anything with those savings that is directly related to, for example, our journey towards renewable energy, such as taking those savings and applying them to accelerating, say, the transmission of the light fleet to electric vehicles? Have we purposed the savings into something that is aligned with our goals around clean energy, renewable energy, or has it just been seen of we saved that money, so that was the end of it? Ms Adams?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think indirectly we have, but your question is if we, purposefully set that money aside, and the answer is no, because we've budgeted in each year for what we estimated our cost to be for the operation of our power. But yes, we have at the same time also expended money in line with our climate emergency plan and environment plan.
All right, thank you. Any other questions about this particular item? No? All right, 13.3, Lathlane Redevelopment Project Update for the advocacy. My question is to the Chief Executive Officer, noting that the officer report does not refer to the advocacy that was done by you and I at meetings in December with the local, federal and state members for Victoria Park. Will the officer report be able to be updated for the benefit of everybody before the OCM to include the details of not only those meetings but our pending meeting this Friday with the Liberal candidate for the state seat of Victoria Park? Mr CEO?
Thank you, Mayor Vernon, and the short answer is yes. And apologies for omitting them. There was also an omission in paragraph 4 where we didn't include Minister Saffioti, and we'll include that as well.
All right, thank you. That's all the question that I had. Are there any other questions about this item? No? All right, item 14.1, post-year end budget review 2023-24, final carry forward projects and surplus funds allocation. Councillor Devereux, you have some questions.
Just one question, Mayor Vernon, which was related to the reserves for road renewal, and I did receive an answer to that. But I guess my follow-up question is there a reserve that does hold funds for active transport projects?
Direct that question to the Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Old. You probably thought you were going to get away without any questions this forum.
Through the Mayor, there is not a specific reserve for that. There are a number of reserves that projects related to that that strategy could be sourced from. Road reserve could be one. It could be a future projects reserve. I think a future fund reserve. So I've got two with future. I do get confused. We can examine that through the budget process. I guess if I can maybe extrapolate a little bit. So the point of allocating to these reserves is for a broad bucket. When you wish to allocate it to a particular program, you narrow it down through the budget process, and that's when you would say we want to use it for A, B, or C. But short answer, no, we don't have one specifically for that purpose. It could be captured under a number of the existing reserves, depending on the nature of the project.
Thank you.
Anything further, Councillor Devereux? No?
No.
All right. Any other questions about this item? Councillor Minson.
Thank you, Matt. In reference to the carry forward projects, specifically the road renewals, I think there's about $5 to $6 million worth of road renewals projects being carried forward. I recall last year as well, there was, I can't remember the number, but a similar order of road renewals projects being carried forward. So my question is, I guess, kind of, clarity of whether or not we think we can deliver these carry forward road renewals projects this financial year, alongside, I guess, what we've already planned and budgeted to deliver anyway. So we're expecting, I guess, another carry forward of a similar order magnitude of road renewals projects again.
Mr. Old.
It's too far away for me to predict that for the end of this financial year. I can provide an update on the specific projects listed here if you wish, as further information. How far we're completed. Most of these I think would probably be complete. And I would probably point out this is not the major budget review. That's still coming next month. So we'll have a clearer picture there, because we're actually canvassing the managers and the execs for a projected carry forward, a very early projected carry forward list right now. So A, I can provide clarity on where we are with these projects, and B, the budget review, the big mid-year budget review is coming up next month.
I'm happy that we just continue the conversation as we go through the budget process of how we can, get on top of the delivery of the road renewals program. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Minson. Any other questions about this item at this stage? No? All right. We then go to item 14.7, which is the LGIS waiver of quotation. I should warn you, Councillor Minson, I know you had a question about it. In the pre-briefing for tonight, I was informed by the CEO that the title waiver of quotation is not the correct title for this particular report, and that can be amended administratively. That may have or may not have been the subject of your question, but I'm going to go to you now and we'll deal with the question of its proper title in a moment.
It's probably, kind of stems from the question, but I guess the first question, is getting clarity of the recommendation. Are we approving, just a process of removing the requirement to seek quotes over a certain price, or are we actually, as I think the recommendation reads, awarding a 3-year contract to LGIS?
Mr. Old?
Both. So there is a 3-year contract to award. We actually have provision under the Local Government Act, and I have now got not that in front of me, where we have actually sought tenders, and this is a renewal, so we could claim it under that section, which we have not done for this item. But this is actually also reflecting the policy adopted or reviewed late last year, where LGIS is specifically listed as a waiver of quotation. I'm not sure what the new title would be. So it's to do the two things. It's above the CEO's delegation, and also just informing council that we are renewing this and we wish to do it for 3 years.
I think I'll just get from Mr. CEO, you indicated there should be another title to this report.
Thank you, Mayor Vernon. Yes, absolutely. It will say LGIS award of contract.
So I guess with that then, are we, would we typically see, the contract and the details of such a contract being that large if we are to approve it? Or is it normal as it's presented now, I guess, that there isn't that detail provided?
Mr. Old?
Generally, through the Mayor, generally when tenders are the type of things that you would award, my understanding is you don't necessarily see the contract because at that point the contract may actually not exist. In this case, the renewal is for July through to June for next financial year, so the contract per se doesn't actually exist as such because we renew that sort of May, June, we submit that information, we get the invoice in July. So I can provide you what the costs and natures and ins and outs of some of those things that we get through the insurance policy probably in a elected members update might be the more appropriate fashion because it's it covers everything that the town insures, including workers' comp and property and all sorts of stuff. So if there's a specific something in there, I may be able to provide that information.
Councillor Minson, you were seeking, I take it, some information short of actually being able to read the contract and see what it covers. Is that what you were after specifically?
Yeah, and I guess even just at the detail doesn't need to be there, but typically with the other, kind of tenders and stuff we have awarded, that the actual cost at least was there, because at the moment the cost presented in the report is an estimate on what we paid or what we're paying this financial year, I guess, and just saying, it'd be roughly 3 times that in the next 3 years. So I guess I'm comfortable approving a contract that I really don't have the detail of even at the high, the heads of the contract detail. So I guess question could some kind of similar kind of detail be provided that we have seen in the past for other tenders and other contracts?
Mr. Old, and when you answer that question, could you consider would Councillor Minson's point equate to the ability for even a draft schedule to the insurance policy be able to be made available to elected members, even as part of this report, even if it had to be considered by the CEO to be a confidential attachment? I just don't know what's available.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I was considering whether it is under confidential cover in the first place, which we can probably talk about tomorrow. I think we could probably give you, because I've got it in front of me, what we did last year, as in the components of the various aspects of insurance that we are covered by, and the cost for those components. It's broken down. So for next year, I have to stress that will be June, July, when they say workers' comp is going up by 5% or whatever else. We just don't have that information because it's only February and we won't know that for some time. So last year is probably as good as we could provide, and I'll be comfortable this would probably answer most of what your queries are. Anything of substantial change will be through the budget process, and I think if you recall last year in the last budget workshop, at that point you get indication of what workers' comp may go up. So through that process we try and give you some information, but I can work through that and we'll provide.
And I guess, related to other than the actual details of the policy, also, I guess without going out to tender, trying to ensure value for money without a competitive process, has there been analysis done on, I guess, what percentage increases in the insurance costs we have seen through LGIS over the past few years? And I guess, like you're saying, we don't know it yet, but for the coming financial year, how that compares to, I guess, market insurance costs, and I guess how that relates to the last time we did a competitive evaluation, which was 5 years ago.
Mr. Old?
I'll take that on notice. I'm not sure what information I'll have to hand in that short period of time, but looking at the annual report we get from LGIS, there's a column here that says 6% increase in contribution, for example, for one aspect. So we should be able to provide some high level data on that.
Councillor Minson, anything further?
No, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Mr. Old, with regards to the proposal for the waiver of seeking a quotation, have I understood that correctly? It's part of the process under the regulations that we're to go through a formal process for seeking insurance services by a contract, but we can, in effect, waive the process of going out to the market in certain circumstances, which I think is what's being proposed here by the award of the tender. Would it not make more sense for Council's resolution to include a definitive part of the recommendation that says Council waives the requirement for a quotation and sets out the reasons why in this instance we're waiving it, so that anyone reading the resolution would understand why it is that we have done that, assuming that that is what Council decides to do, and noting that currently there's nothing in the officer's report that actually definitively outlines the reason for waiving the quotation process. Mr. Old.
Mayor, we can put some of that information in further considerations, yes.
So perhaps we might take on notice then the question about the waiver of the quotation process and where that comes from, how it's done, and whether it ought to be a part of the recommendation.
Yes, we'll take that on notice. Yeah.
Thank you. So take that on notice. Any other questions about this item? No? All right, thank you. Well, that brings us to the end of the items that were listed. Item 15 on the agenda is committee reports. We have none. Item 16, motion of which previous notice has been given, we have none. Item 17 is public participation time for the second time, which I now open at 8:07 p.m. Is there any member of the public who wishes to ask any questions or make statements who didn't do so at the beginning of the meeting? Mr. Boulis, I see that you're still here. You did make a statement in the first part of public participation time, but I'm not going to count your question about what particularly the church could do to deepen its relationship with council and the community as being at all relevant here, because it wasn't part of the application. Do you have any questions that are related to any of the agenda items we've discussed tonight that you would like to ask? Please come forward and just switch the microphone on. You just need to press that. If you need some help, we'll get the council liaison officer to do that. There you go.
Thank you. So do I understand that it has been not yet decided?
That's right. There's no decisions are made tonight. This is an opportunity for us to ask questions and gain more information and seek clarification for the things that are written in the officer's report. So no doubt you will have seen the officer's report, which makes a recommendation to our council, which we will consider in 2 weeks' time at the ordinary council meeting on the 18th of February. So at that time, we will potentially debate this item and we will vote for or against the item based on the recommendation. But tonight was really just a chance for all of us to ask our questions while the town's staff, who have the qualifications and experience in the particular area, which is statutory planning, are here to answer our questions. Sometimes we have lots of questions about items, sometimes we have none. So no decisions made tonight, and you would have heard some of our questions. The town staff asked to take those questions on notice. That means they're going to provide the answers to those questions, and those answers will be in the next agenda in 2 weeks' time. They'll be in a separate section at the end of the report under the heading Further Consideration. So all those questions we asked tonight that could not be answered on the spot, the town staff will provide us with more information to help us make our decision.
Thank you. And would we be able to respond to those questions at any point of time during the consultation before taking the vote?
Yes, so the process for you is that in 2 weeks' time when we meet again for our ordinary council meeting, the week before that, usually on the Thursday, late in the afternoon, can't tell you exactly off the top of my head now which date that might be. It might be something like the 13th of February, I think off the top of my head. That should be about right. The agenda for the ordinary council meeting will be made public, so it will be able to be accessed on the town's website, or if you have any difficulties and can't use the town's website to access it, you're welcome to come into the administration office downstairs on a weekday and request a copy of it to be made available to you. You'll get a chance to read it. if you as the applicant, so the church, if you would like to participate in the meeting on the 18th of February, you have a number of opportunities available to you as the applicant for a planning matter. You can apply to make a deputation, which means we do deputations at the beginning of the meeting, and you're welcome to come forward and you'll have up to 10 minutes to make a statement to all of the council about what you would like us to do with your application. You can highlight things that you've read in the officer's report done by the town. So if you read things that you are concerned about or you don't agree with, you'll be able to tell us those things in a deputation. You will need to officially request to make the deputation at the council meeting, because council must formally approve a request for a deputation. And I just asked the Manager of Governance and Strategy, I think the request for the deputation needs to be made in writing, needs to be made, is it by 12 o'clock the day before the meeting? Right, so it needs to be made 24 hours before the meeting. So we meet at 6:30, so you'd need to have made it before 6:30 on the Monday night, which is the 17th of February. Me personally, I'd suggest you not leave it till 6:30 because that's kind of after hours. I'd suggest that you put it forward into your thinking a little earlier. So that's a very specific opportunity. Now, if you don't want to do a deputation, you don't have to. We also have public statement time, which you can attend and just come up as you did tonight, and you can make a statement, but you will be limited as to how much time you have to make your statement. And equally, you can come and ask questions during public question time, but you may be limited to the number of questions you could ask, because if we have a packed public gallery with lots of people who want to ask questions about lots of other items, I have to try and be fair to everyone. So there are opportunities for you to participate in the process long before we make our decision. So we like to receive as much information as we possibly can, including from applicants who may want to come in person or may want to have someone make a presentation on their behalf. If you want to show us pictures, diagrams, if you want to make a PowerPoint presentation on the computer for us, you can bring it with you on a thumb drive and you can give it to our council liaison officer before the meeting starts, and we'll make arrangements to play it on the overhead projector, so the screen above you, so you in the audience will see it and we will see it as well. So we'll be able to do those things, and that way you'll have a chance to participate in the process before the decision is made. Does that make that clear?
Very clear. Thank you.
And if you do have any questions after tonight, feel free to call the town staff during weekdays and ask to speak to the governance team, and they can walk you through the process again in more detail if you need.
Shall do, Your Honour. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And no need to call me Your Honour. It's lovely for you to say so, but Mayor Vernon is perfectly fine. Thank you. Your Honour is reserved for judges of courts of law in Australia, so I'm not that at the moment, but I'm very, very, very grateful for you to have said.
We will pray that you will be. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Boulos. There being no other members of the public in the gallery, I'll close public participation time at 8:13 p.m. Item 18, questions from members without notice on general matters. Do we have any questions without notice from members about general matters? Anybody? No? All quiet on the Western Front. Item 19 is confidential matters. Our agenda has none, and so at 8:14 p.m. I declare the agenda briefing forum is closed. Thank you very much everyone for participating this evening. We are adjourned.